Now, last night we saw Barcelona make it through to the final of the Copa del Rey. We can see here they're going to be taking on a Real Madrid team. Going into that Copa del Rey final, let's look forward to that. They're up against a Real Madrid side who they've beaten this season. They've kind of dominated them in their games. Will this Copa del Rey final be any different just because of the occasion?
I know they've thrashed them. They've absolutely thrashed them in the two games that they've played. The aggregate score is 9-2 to Barcelona, 4-0 win at the Bernabeu in the league, and a 5-2 win in the Spanish Super Cup as well. So it is a one-off game. It is taking place in La Cartuja in a neutral ground. There will be 25,000 sets of supporters, each sets of supporters. So it might be a bit different, but if we're going on purely what we've seen in footballing terms from these two sides, Barcelona are massive, massive favourites. At the moment, Barcelona are playing a completely different sport to Real Madrid. If you take their last few games and the last few performances, Barcelona are on another planet at the moment. That isn't to say, write off Real Madrid at your peril, because we've seen they always seem to find a way in the big games. But Barcelona are playing such good football. They've basically got the entire squad performing at the highest level of their careers. They're up against the Real Madrid side that is getting the job done without necessarily convincing. So at the moment, and it's still 3 weeks to go until the final, Barcelona are massive, massive favourites.
And the context at that final could be wildly different from what it is now. Some teams might be eliminated from the Champions League after their quarterfinal rounds. Regardless, it does feel like the team that's playing better football, it's clearly Barcelona over Real Madrid. But Barcelona could still walk away trophyless. Real Madrid could still walk away trophyless from the season. The margins are so thin, Phil. Does it feel like Real Madrid once again could pull off the ultimate smash and grab where they're not at 100% and Barcelona are, and walk away with a title?
They could definitely do that in the Copa del Rey because it's a one-off. It's a little bit harder in the league, but they're only 3 points behind Barcelona. And don't forget, we've still got a Clásico to come in La Liga as well on the 11th of May. So there's some really, really big games.
And maybe in the Champions League final too.
And maybe in the Champions League final, we could have a Clásico final as well. So we could have 3 games that decide 3 competitions between these two bitterest, most eternal rivals. It could be absolutely blockbuster. But Real Madrid, by the way, like I said, write them off at your peril, particularly in the Champions League, where we've seen on numerous occasions when they've won the Champions League, I don't think they've been the best team in Europe on numerous occasions, and yet they found a way to do this. So at the moment, they're not the best team in Spain. They could easily find a way to beat Barcelona because that's what they tend to do in finals. Real Madrid tend to win finals, and the last 2 Clásico finals in the Copa del Rey in 2014 and in 2011, Real Madrid won both of them.
We need to talk about the breaking news from just moments ago, because yesterday we got a La Liga ruling that said that the levers that Barcelona pulled in order to register Dani Olmo and Pau Victor were insufficient, right? They were essentially illegal via those VIP boxes in the new Camp Nou. But moments ago, the High Sports Council of Spain officially ruled that everything that Barcelona did was legal, so Pau Victor and Dani Olmo could play. What does this all mean?
Yeah, I mean, let's just try and break this very complex story down to simple terms, which you've done very well, Nico. Basically, yesterday, La Liga came out and said that Barcelona's latest accounts, which they submitted earlier on in the season, didn't include the income allegedly generated by December's last-minute VIP box sale, which is about 100 million euros. That allowed them to register Dani Olmo and Pau Victor. A separate audit, which has taken place subsequently, showed that 100 million euros isn't there. So La Liga are saying, well, hold on, if that 100 million euros isn't there, you can't register these 2 players. The CSD, as you said, the Sports Council, back in January said, these players can play for 3 months while we investigate. That 3-month deadline was coming up now on the 7th of April. They've just come out today and said, we've investigated and these players are good to play until the end of the season because otherwise it contravenes their law, the law in terms of employment law. Rather than saying that everything that Barcelona has done is okay, which is not exactly what they're saying legally these people have the right to work and their work is playing for Barcelona. So they can play until the end of the season, and then we're going to have another chapter of Barcelona trying to come up with money and pulling levers and all sorts of comments, I'm sure, from President Joan Laporta.
Yeah, it feels like the mess that Joan Laporta has inherited never stops cleaning itself up, and he's always trying to juggle when it comes to a transfer window. But ironically enough, I look at a team like Betis, who Barcelona are playing this weekend, by the way, who in fact had to sell Nabil Fekir, one of their better players, over the summer in order to comply with the financial fair play rules set in Spain. And then you look at a team like Barcelona, on the other hand, that goes to extraordinary, almost completely unique circumstances just for them in order to kind of comply when they're breaking the rules to begin with.
I was just talking to some colleagues now as soon as the story broke, and they said, well, that's financial fair play out of the window, because it's very, very difficult if one team can do this and other teams, as you said, it's a very, very good example, Real Betis, who have to sell their best player to comply, and they've had to sell a lot of players. It feels like there is a bit more leeway, a bit more margin perhaps being given to Barcelona in this circumstance than other teams, for sure.
It almost seems like it's all good news coming out of Barcelona with these two players now, and then obviously last night's win. Was this a failure for Atletico Madrid?
Yeah, I think we spoke earlier on in the week, and I said that, if they don't win, Atletico Madrid's season is over today. And, this morning, Atletico Madrid fans woke up and they found themselves out of the Copa del Rey, out of the Champions League, and 9 points off Barcelona in La Liga. So their season is effectively over. How did that season go about? Well, they were knocked out of the Champions League by Real Madrid, the most successful team in the history of the Champions League, in controversial circumstances, I think it's fair to say, with that Julian Alvarez penalty. And they've just been knocked out of the Copa del Rey by a single goal margin by the most successful team in the history of the Copa del Rey, which is Barcelona. So if you look at it objectively like that, then the margins were very, very fine for Atleti in the Cups. In the league, there's perhaps less excuse to be so far off the lead, with still a good chunk of the season left to play. I think we expected them to compete a little bit better than they have. And you know what? Up until about a month ago, they did. They were competing on 3 fronts, and it has all just fallen apart. So rather, I would say that it's a disappointment rather than a failure for Atletico Madrid.
A lot of action happening out of La Liga. I mean, both teams, we could meet them in the finals for all 3 competitions. So, Phil, I'm sure...
Never happened in the Champions League before.
No. So, Phil, I'm sure we'll be having you a lot more on the show if that were to happen. So thank you very much for your time today and explaining all those difficult rulings coming out of Barcelona too with the 2 players.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.